Hello. Hey, Rob. Good evening. Are we all in our places with bright, shiny faces? Well, it's good to see everyone. Thank you for coming again. Did anybody or did everybody get a book? What book? Well, for those who weren't here last week, we do have some handouts. And actually, Tony, can I get you to see if anybody needs them? Anybody here not last week who needs the handouts? The core scriptures and the book list, the suggested books. Although you can get any book you want for relationships or health or wealth. You can go to Amazon and read recommendations. You can ask someone who's winning, hey, what would you read? What have you read? It could be a magazine, it could be a TED Talk, whatever works for you. I like books because I can write in them. Some people I emailed out, hey, yard sales are cheap, you can get them for 50 cents or a buck. People chimed in and said, well, I like Audible, or I like the library for audiobooks or books. The only downside with that is you can't write in them. So make sure you got a notepad handy when you're doing that. So did anybody start reading a book? Hands? Okay, can you share something, some insight or something that really resonated with you from your book? And what book was it? Nancy.
Okay, so, confession. I was given this Love and Respect book as a gift. I don't even know when. Years now. It's been years.
Love and Respect.
Love and Respect book. And never read it. It's been sitting on my bookshelf all those years. And so I picked it up and read it. And started to read it. And, you know, and I'm already mad. Because
At who?
I don't know, somebody. Because all I've read so far is just the introductory chapter, and it's talking about how, you know, respect, you know, that respect is so key, and, you know, how as wives we could really get the love that we desire if we really give our husbands the respect that they really need. And I'm just like,
Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful insights in that book. And he starts out with the scripture, husbands, love your wives. Wives, respect your husbands. But yeah, and the paradigm that, you know, men are supposed to love unconditionally, but men are supposed to earn the respect. So yeah, and how when you don't feel loved, you're not respectful, and when you don't feel respect, you're not loving. Yeah, it's the crazy cycle. So very cool. Bill?
Yeah, the book I chose was 7 Levels of Intimacy by Matthew Kelly. He's basically talking about relationships and how your relations, the thing that most stuck with me was his introduction, saying that your purpose in life is to become the best version of yourself that you can. Basically, I think that's what God wants you to do. God wants you to be the best person you can be. And so he says, you're only going to do that through relationships. Relationships with God, relationships with people around you, family, friends, your significant other, whatever. Those relationships are going to go through different levels of depth. And so he's going to explain what those are. So, but the fact that you need to be loving to get to be the best person you can be, that stuck with me.
Thank you. Very good book. Jeff, did I see your hand? Or no? Okay.
I think I chose Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover. Okay. And I think what really resonated with me is the rationalization that we do. It's really not that bad. And
The debts and things like that?
And how we kind of spur ourselves along into that deception. And just really challenging to take a critical view of where you're at and where you want to be. And the simple process, or seemingly simple process, minus the self-control piece of that.
Yeah, a lot of things are actually very simple in concept and extremely hard to do. You know, like saying no to yourself, you know, or opening up all the credit cards and bills and writing down all your debts and things like that. The thing I love about Ramsey's program is he talks about the debt snowball. We're going to get into this later, but he has a good visual for you that you can post on your refrigerator or in the bedroom or wherever, and you guys can see the debt's paid off, the money's saved, you can track it, each of the roles, the different steps that you're going through, paying off debt and building up that emergency fund of 3 to 6 months, and then really going after your retirement plan, 15%, things like that. And this is great for helping us focus because like I said last week, we live in an ADD world and it's hard to stay focused on anything for more than like 1.4 seconds. So we're like Dory, right? So I mentioned you can get those books at like yard sales, Goodwill. I picked up 4 books at the Goodwill. The 4 of them cost less than, I think, $8 for all 4. So if anybody still needs a book and you're interested, I've got Wild at Heart, Love is a Verb, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and a QuickBook Budget Meals cookbook. This one I picked up at a yard sale for, I think, 50 cents. Start late, finish rich. And I've actually started writing in it. I'm actually reading it, and there are a lot of good insights. Some things I disagree with, but much of it I agree with. And I think you're going to find when you read, I agree with 90% of that, but 10%, meh, M-E-H, meh, and that's fine. So, can I get someone to pass out some handouts? Someone else. Thank you, sir.
Got it.
I have another resource too. There's a used bookstore at DU that's open to the public. It's I think it's Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 9 to 3 maybe. It's right in the main building at PU campus. I can send that out in an email
Do you go there?
Oh yeah.
So an idea is maybe see if they have any of the books on the list and ask people, hey, does anybody want this? And then if it's really inexpensive, I mean, yeah, and then so maybe you could buy it and then they could get you back on Tuesday or Sunday or something.
Okay.
It's just an idea.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So last week we went through the core scriptures that really talk about everything we're doing here, right? The one thing I didn't really cover was Proverbs 4:23, which a lot of us know as guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. The New Century Version says it a bit differently. How do you guard your heart? Be careful what you think, for your thoughts run your life. And in the notes I sent out, and I hope you've read those, like once a day, that'd be good. No. But have you ever just been having like a good day and everything's going fine, you're singing along with the radio, and then you remember something that someone said or did to you? It could have been 20 years ago or 5 years ago, and all of a sudden you're having a rotten day. Your emotions have totally flipped a switch. You're kind of getting angry and hurt again. And that's how thoughts go. Our thoughts drive our emotions, but unfortunately our emotions can then drive our decisions. Our decisions to eat stuff that isn't in our plan. Our decision to buy stuff or spend money on stuff that's not in our plan. So we're saying yes to things, all those little things, and then we end up saying no to the really big things that we really want. So that's a very core scripture. There are other scriptures that relate to that one. I think it's in Philippians where he talks about, think about this, whatever is holy, whatever is lovely, whatever is beautiful, whatever is pure, whatever is right. I said it out of order, but I think we all know what I'm talking about. When we capture every thought, when we take captive those stray thoughts that come in and just take over, we wrap them up, we take captive. So these scriptures on wealth are different scriptures. So there's going to be a lot of scriptures on wealth. The Bible has a lot. There's going to be many scriptures on health, but not as many. And there'll be plenty on relationships as well. So the Bible has a lot of scriptures on wealth, many of which are warning us against it, right? What we're looking at for wealth is not synonymous with riches or billions and things like that. For us, wealth is having more than enough for your needs. What are your needs? Your needs: food, clothing, shelter, transportation, medical coverage, bills, health care in general. Most everything else, I mean, some of us may have a few other needs, but by and large, those are our basic needs. We also have future needs that maybe even this year of a car breaking down or someone gets laid off and we have to pay the bills in between. So we have some expected but unexpected or unplanned needs because we don't know when the car is going to break down, but we know it's going to break down. We know someone's going to get sick sometime. And if you have teenagers, you know there's going to be braces. You know there's going to be some of these things come along. Those are needs. And by the way, retirement is a need. We have 40 to 45 years of working, really, and generating an income. And then, ideally, we're going to live on some of that for another 15 or maybe even 30 years. The odds, if you make it to 65, you've got a 25% chance now with today's health care of making it into your 90s. So you could be retired for 30 years. And again, healthcare might even get better. I hope. And so you may have a long time in retirement. So that's a need. Unfortunately, Americans are extremely unprepared for an emergency, for an unexpected, unplanned expense. About 50% of Americans couldn't come up with $400 for an unplanned expense. Now, that's heartbreaking. I think I don't have the numbers. Well, actually, I probably have them over here. Let me check. Was it talking about retirement, actually? 57% of Americans have less than $25,000 for retirement. I'm sorry, it's a different handout. I'll email this out later. So 57%, almost 60% have less than $25,000 for retirement. That's not going to make it 30 years. 28% have less than $1,000. And 55% are at risk of not being able to completely cover their essential living expenses in retirement. 55%. And that's the world we live in. And the main reason is the message we get constantly that we're bombarded with is you need this and you need it now. And it's not one of our basic essential needs. It's, the new iPhone. But I have an iPhone, but I need the new one. Or the iPad or whatever. The new grill or whatever. Those are cool, and I'm not against them, but they're not our needs. But Americans are buying all of those things, and they're not putting aside a portion for emergencies, and they're not putting aside a portion for retirement. So we're going to get into that and what that looks like. But first we're going to go through some of these scriptures, the scriptures on wealth. Who would like to read John 3:27 for me? Bill, Jeff.
John answered.
Nice and loud.
John answered, a man can receive nothing. He can claim nothing. He can take unto himself nothing, except as it has been granted to him from heaven. A man must be content to receive the gift which is given him from heaven. There is no other source.
So who's the source?
God.
God is the source of all we have. Material, wealth, money comes from God. The ability to make money, our health, our job opportunities. But wealth is not a sign of God's favor. And when I say wealth, I'm talking about money in this case. And being poor is not a sign of God's disfavor. A lot of people think, well, it's more noble to be poor. I mean, you see all those scriptures. And the scriptures warn us against the rich and about being rich, who oppress the poor. Like, in order to become rich, you must oppress the poor. And again, we're not talking about becoming rich. We're talking about having more than enough for your needs. That's what we're looking at wealth. There are many examples in the Bible of wealthy people who are godly. And there are many examples in the Bible of poor people who are godly. And there are many examples of poor people who are not godly and rich people who are not godly. So that by itself is not indicative. But what I propose to you is that in America, over 40 to 45 years, most of us should be able to accumulate enough wealth to pay for that 15 to 30 years of retirement, which, by the way, if you think about what your living expenses are and then multiply that out for 30 years, that's a lot of money. But with compound interest and that steady plotting, which there's a scripture on the steady plotter, you should have a lot of money. Again, what do we do with that? Why is the scriptures warn us so much against having a lot of money? Anyone care to hazard an opinion on that? Scott?
Sometimes you'll put your trust in your money instead of God.
Absolutely. 1 Timothy 6:10, it tells us that the love of money causes all kinds of evil. Some people have turned away from what we believe because they want to get more and more money. But they have caused themselves a lot of pain and sorrow. When we have a lot of money, we get comfortable. We feel good about ourselves. We feel secure. I'm not worried about what may come because I have all this stuff in my storehouses. I have all these barns full of my stuff. The next scripture even talks about that. I'm going to take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. So the problem with having a lot of money is that we glorify ourselves. We become the focus, or I should say that is the big temptation, is for us to become the focus. We all know that we were all put here to glorify God. Everything that is about us is supposed to glorify God. He is the source of all that we have, and He intends us to use it to glorify Him, including our money. We know we give 10% back, and we do that because God can do so much with that. But with all the scriptures on wealth, it's very apparent that God intends, or God's very interested in what we do with the other 90%. God does not comfort us so we can be comfortable. God comforts us so that we can comfort others. So if you've ever been through a hard time and you felt God's comfort, you know that just wasn't for you. It was so you can share that with other people. You can help them through their hard times. God does not bless us with wealth so we can be comfortable. He blesses us so we can take care of our needs, our family's needs, and the needs of those around us. And it is such a blessing to be able to help someone, to do something that, to keep the lights on or whatever it is. If you've ever done any volunteer work, I'm sure we all have, or given anonymously or whatever, your heart sings. And that tells you that you are a spiritual being created in God's image. Deuteronomy 8:18 tells us to remember the Lord your God, because He is the one who gives you the ability to produce wealth. And again, wealth, more than enough for your needs, that's rooted in gratitude, recognizing God as the source, and humility, knowing I got nothing without God. That's a beautiful thing. It can be a beautiful thing for God, taking care of those needs. When you meet someone's needs, that points them to God. That's that North Star, right? And money is a tool. Money is a tool for our glory or God's glory. And like anything, it's just an issue of the heart. Could someone read Proverbs 27:23, please? John.
Riches can disappear fast, and the king's crown doesn't stay in his family forever. So watch your business interests closely. Know the state of your flocks and your herds.
So I picked this version because most of the versions refer to flocks and herds, and that doesn't translate as well in today's time. But it's basically take care of what you have, keep an eye on it, protect it. I was not a smart child. My mother was very poor, but she got unexpected money, and she bought me a very expensive dirt bike. And I left it out at the video arcade unlocked. I just went in to watch some people because I didn't have any money, play some games, and it was gone about 10 minutes later. I didn't protect it. Have you ever left tools out in the rain? If you know, there's a lot of ways that we don't take care of what we have. I have bought some $75 shirts from yard sales that were great condition, but they were missing a whole button. But there was a button down there, you just had to take it off and sew it up there. But people would rather get rid of it than do that hard work of threading a needle and sewing it. But you see, we're too busy. It was like, oh, I'll get to that someday. Oh, it's been 3 years, let me just sell it. You know, let's get rid of stuff. You know, take care of what you have. And again, our own bodies, our health, our relationships, the things that are very big parts of our paycheck, like our homes, you know, our vehicles, things like that. Take care of them. You know, to me, the most beautiful car, the hottest, sexiest car, is fully functional and paid for. My car, my 2005 Nissan Pathfinder on Kelly's Blue Book has a value of like $2,500. You know, I've got 225,000 miles on it. I'm hoping and praying to get to 300. You know, because I don't want to get a new car. You know, I don't want that. You know, well, when I was younger, I did. I drove that 92 hot blue Toyota Celica. I got up to the max, 125. You know, I wasn't a smart person, you know. But good will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. It's easy to be generous with someone else's money. And when we realize it's God's money, it's a lot easier to let it go. Especially when you realize what God can do with that. Where He can save that soul, change that family, change that eternity. Whenever you're able, do good to people who need help. That's why we're here. Honor the Lord with your wealth. When we look at wealth as having more than enough for our needs, then we stop trying to impress people. Dave Ramsey says, you know, we borrow money to buy cars we can't afford, to impress people at a stoplight that we'll never meet or know. And there's some truth to that. You know, the song that was playing, there was a message in there. I snuck that in there. Don't let the Joneses get you down. Some of you younger people may not be familiar with that one. It is a really good song by one of the greatest groups in history of music, The Temptations. But we can get down because other people seem to be doing better than us. That can really ruin our day. Or we feel really good because something bad happened to them, or we got a raise and they didn't, or we got a new car and they, you know. Stop comparing ourselves to other people. And when we're grateful for what we have, when we look to see what God can do with that, it becomes a beautiful thing that God blesses, and we contribute to that. Philippians 4:19, and my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus. He doesn't promise us that we'll be billionaires, that we'll be filthy rich. There's that filthy and rich, you know, seem to go together there. But we're told that He'll meet all of our needs. And those are physical, material, emotional, spiritual, relational, which is a big part of what this class is about. Jesus, teach us to pray. When you pray, say, Our Father who art in heaven. He says, give us this day our daily bread. And most commentaries just describe the daily bread as more than food. It is all your basic needs. And God tells us He will do that. But the problem is that we want to fulfill our wants. And the problem with that is our wants keep growing exponentially. Have you ever, and I did this many times, have you ever been expecting a pay raise or a bonus and you thought, you know, we're gonna arrive, we're gonna have peace. We're gonna be able to pay all our bills and have great vacation and do stuff, and we're not gonna have any more stress with money. And then that comes and goes, And a month or 2 months later, you can't wait for the next pay raise, the next promotion, because it's like, I'm barely making it. I doubled my pay in the Air Force within like 2 years, and then doubled it, no, not quite double it, but 50% more 2 years later. And each time, right afterwards, I was living paycheck to paycheck. I couldn't believe how I ever made it back then, in the dark days, you know. Am I the only one? Or that our wants always expand. But it's when we actually stop ourselves and say, is this a need or is it a want? That's where we put the brakes on our spending. So for those of you who want to rein that in, that's one of the big keys, is ask yourself, is this a need or is it just a want? And God loves us so much. He gives us all of our needs, and he gives us many of our wants too, you know. But he's not a genie, you know. He's not Make-A-Wish, you know. The wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get. I think I got these scriptures out of order a little bit. So obviously, having wealth is not an evil thing, because it says the wise have wealth and luxury. Again, because they have more than enough. To them, what they have is more than enough, and they're very happy and content. I told you, my mom is the wealthiest person I know because her needs are so little. You know, she is happy as a clam if she can get to the library and get some old black and white movies and go to the YMCA and do some water aerobics, then go to the antique store and have a sandwich with some girlfriends. That's a beautiful, wonderful, fulfilling day for my mom. You know? Not for most people. Library, leftovers, what? Yep. And I don't want to judge anyone here who doesn't eat leftovers, but I personally think that's a very expensive taste. You know? But anyway. But Proverbs 21:20, it also tells us fools spend whatever they get. Other versions say they devour all they have. In today's language, we would say live paycheck to paycheck, or spend more than they earn, even more so. 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and about 1/3 of them spend more than they earn. It's a downward spiral. So if you spend everything you earn, it's hard to have any money for an unexpected emergency. So what happens when the car breaks down? Visa will get it, and then I'm going to pay compound interest to Visa. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck already, you probably can't afford much more than minimum payments. So it can take 20 years or more to pay off a $5,000 credit card balance if you're making minimum payments. And you will pay back $10,000 to $15,000 over that time. Always living with stress and never having a cushion against unplanned expenses. Now, a lot of people, the unplanned expense, that emergency is a pizza. You know, it's a TV, it's a trip, you know, because I deserve this vacation. True humility and respect for the Lord lead a man to riches, honor, and long life. And again, this goes back to what I have comes from God. So how can I glorify God with this? I'm grateful for this. I appreciate this. I'm going to take care of this. And I'm going to see how I can glorify him with it. And that leads to joy, because you're joining him. You're a co-worker with him. A man without self-control is as defenseless as a city with broken down walls. Most of the scriptures, I looked at the versions, they describe self-control as temper, or losing your temper. But self-control, as we all know, is a lot. When I go to the store, it takes self-control for me to say no to myself, whether it's a grocery store or clothing store or whatever store. Self-control is saying no to yourself. It's those boundaries. You know, again, I learned to say no to myself so I can say yes to myself later for those big things. Sorry, this thing just... This is a really cool commercial. It says a lot. It speaks volumes about the American mentality. So I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. Who could read Genesis 41 for me, 34 through 36? Scott? Nice and loud.
Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine.
Thank you. So this scripture comes from God, and is God's way not only of rescuing Joseph from his unjust imprisonment and elevating him to rule over Egypt and save the Israelites, but it's also a message about using, bless you, your years of abundance to care for yourself, your family, your people in your years of need. In this case, it was 7 years and 7 years. In our case, and again, we don't know how long we're going to live, but potentially, for most of us, our years of abundance, our years of generating income are 40 to 45 years. Our years of needs, well, 65 or 67, whatever, basically 1 to 30 maybe, or more. We don't know. If you go averages, you're probably around 15 years. That's expensive. But there's a good principle there. In this one, it's 20%. Put aside 20% to cover for those years. Most financial advisors now say 10 to 15% of your income, of your take-home pay. One pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. That's Proverbs 13:7. Why do people pretend to be richer than they are?
Vanity and pride.
Vanity and pride? Yeah. We like to compare ourselves. Have you ever noticed people say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. What do you do?" Usually the people who initiate that question feel pretty good about what they do. I walked on the moon. I was an astronaut. What do you do? I'm a lawyer. I make 6 figures. I'm a doctor. It's not usually someone who doesn't feel, "I'm unemployed. What do you do?" You know, "Hey, I'm unemployed. What do you?" You know, that's not, you know, "I've been struggling. You know, I've been laid off." They're not initiating that. We love to compare ourselves to other people. And again, like the Joneses, if others are doing better than us, then we feel worse. If we're doing better than them, we feel better. How silly. In that song, it says, you know, the people you're trying to keep up are trying to keep up too. Everyone's trying to keep up with some imaginary thing. Why do people pretend to be poor if they're not? And we're not talking about so they can collect, you know, Medicare, you know, Medicaid, you know, food stamps, and that happens too. That's fraud. But why would someone have a lot of money and not display it, not advertise it, not strut?
They don't want people coming and asking them for it.
Yeah, because there's going to be some people. It's like, "Hey, you're my ATM," you know, or you know, "I'll pay you right back, I promise," you know. Or it's just not that important to them. They would rather have it and know they have it than everyone else. They don't care that anybody else knows. One of the books on the list, The Millionaire Next Door. Has anyone read that? Can you give us a book report?
Yeah, so basically this guy was given the commission to investigate these people. There's a couple of things that I remember about it, but they were very frugal. You wouldn't know that they had this much wealth. When they were doing the interviews, one of the things they did was, at first they brought in a bunch of food, really expensive food. They didn't like it. They would much rather have eaten McDonald's and the cheapest kind of stuff. But the wealthy people learned to live well below their means, that's what I remember.
Those are good. Those are good. So other takeaways, 75% were first-generation millionaires. They did not inherit it.
Most of them were working people, regular working people.
They lived in
didn't have high-paying jobs.
They lived in a middle-class neighborhood.
Yeah.
They drove a 10-year-old car. Their house was paid for.
Yeah.
They paid cash for that car. They bought it 3 or 4 years old. It wasn't about stuff. It was about having enough for the future, and then if they have more than they need, then they can give that away to a cause, a charity that they believe in. You know, my wife is reading a book called Millionaire Women. Millionaire Women Next Door, and very interesting because it's a little bit different. More of they're even more frugal, and the women in that book had at least $5 million in net worth, and they're very interested in charities and causes and living very frugally. You know, they have enough. They feel good about what they have. It's going to take care of them, but they're looking for the future as well. You know, they don't sit on boards of directors. They don't sit on these charity boards. They just contribute. Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. Gathering money little by little, that's what we're talking about. That's that regular investing, regular saving, dollar cost averaging. That is the compounding of that money over time. I have a spreadsheet that I'm going to share with you with the average American salary in there and what that looks like over a lifetime if they invest. I think it was 15%. When I think of dishonest money dwindling away, I know that's very true, and I've seen it in many cases because it doesn't mean anything to them. You watch an old Western, you see that all the time. You know. But you think of lottery winners, you think of many celebrities who are just emotionally immature, and they're just living, and they have this entourage of suck-ups, and they just spend it all, and then it's gone, and then you see MC Hammer on one of those commercials, or you see, what's his name, 50 cents, 50 Cent, you know, you see these people, you know, and they had $1 million, they had 40 million, they had $100 million. Gone. The poor are always ruled over by the rich, so don't borrow and put yourself under their power. Most versions say the borrower is slave to the lender. If you have credit cards, if you have car loans, if you have these other debts, they have dibs on your paycheck before your family does. You have to pay them before you can decide, do we have enough to go on a vacation or something like that? They got dibs on it. You're working to pay them. They can sue you if you don't pay, and they can garnish your wages, so they get it first. So again, stop spending money you don't have. We're on the last page. Do not lend money. This is just one of those biblical principles, because again, the borrower is slave to the lender. The borrower works for the lender. When you lend money to a family member, a lot of times that family member disappears, and that might be a good investment depending on the person, but with coworkers, colleagues, neighbors, when you lend money and they can't pay you back. I lost a friendship, my best friend in junior high school, over $5. Lost a really good friend in college, over $20. Dumb, you know. Just give it to them if you can afford to. If they need 1,000, you can give them 300. This is what I can do. I don't want it back. This is a gift because I love you. Period. God is trying to help us avoid some of these painful traps. Anybody Star Wars fan? General Akbar? Admiral Akbar? Sorry, what's he say? You are a fan. What does he say? What's the big line? It's a trap! That credit card is a trap! Co-signing that loan, that's a trap. Credit card companies, banks know that's a credit risk. They're not going to pay it back. We need someone to co-sign that because they study this. They know who's going to pay and who's not going to pay. So they get someone to co-sign, a friend, a parent, a relative. And guess who ends up paying off that debt? You. So don't do that. God tells us that. Proverbs 6, 1 through 5. If you have put up security, if you have signed a loan, if you have shaken hands and pledged, basically it says, do this to free yourself. Since you've fallen into your neighbor's hands, go to the point of exhaustion and give your neighbor no rest. Allow no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of the fowler. What hunts gazelles? Lions. It's a matter of life and death. Run! Get away! Free yourself. Get out of the trap. So do not co-sign loans, and in general, avoid debt. Steady plotting brings prosperity. Hasty speculation brings poverty. Get rich quick schemes are schemes that get the person selling it to you rich. It does not get you rich. It brings disaster. It makes you poor. But living within your means, that lifestyle, that regular saving and investing, that will build great wealth. And you'll see that. So in the story of the tortoise and the hare, the tortoise is a steady plotter. Who wins the race? Who always wins the race? The tortoise. So be the tortoise. And Ecclesiastes 11:12 tells us to put our investments in different places because you never know what kind of bad luck you're going to have in this world. Your grandma said, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Who's ever heard of Enron? Global Crossing. And many other companies. You know what happened to those people? They put every egg in one basket and then it dropped from the top of a skyscraper. Their income came from Global Crossing or Enron. And then all of their retirement money, the company bought company stock with the company contributions and then told them how good their stock was and how good it was going to do. And so many of them, even though they had like 18 investment options, they bought company stock for their 401k, for their retirement plan. So they had everything riding on Enron, and it came up craps. And they lost their job, they lost their income, and then they lost their retirement. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Millions in some cases. So don't do that. When you save and invest, by the way, I use those terms to mean different things. Saving is generally for less than 5 years. If you're going to use that money, college, car replacement, knee replacement, braces, whatever, that's savings. You're not really going to invest that money. Because investing means it can go up, but it can go down, it can go up, it can go down. So investing is long-term, like college. You know, you've got a baby, we're going to invest for their college. We got 18 years, or 16 if they're, super smart. Retirement, depending on how old you are, that could be 40 years, 45 years. So the market can go up and down a lot. Most of you have seen the market crash several times. Last big crash was 2008. Did you know that the market crashes about once a decade? If you take the money out when it crashes like in 86, 87, I'm not going to ride that roller coaster, and you move it to money market or bonds at that point, your money doesn't ride back up. It stays way down there. That's buying high and selling low. Not a good idea. You want to buy low and sell high. And so you want to keep it in there to ride the market back up. What do you invest in? There's a lot of disagreement. There's a lot of experts. I like something very simple, very boring, S&P 500 index funds. A mutual fund, an index fund, is very low fees. very inexpensive. And it outperforms the vast majority of all investment options out there, well, in the mutual fund world. Very simple, very inexpensive. A mutual fund already has generally thousands of companies in it, so it's not one company. If one company goes down, even 100 go down, you still got 2,500 companies in there. So it's not going to break it. It may go down, but over time, it should go back up. And then, so that's what it's always done. Past performance is not an accurate predictor of future performance. That's the disclaimer that you get from every company out there. But anyway, those are the scriptures. Here's the commercial. And there's my link. I am message. Hopefully you can hear it okay.
I've got a great family.
It's kind of fuzzy.
4-bedroom house and a great community. Like my car? It's new.
It's new.
I even belong to the local golf club. How do I do it? I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. I can barely pay my finance charges. Somebody help me.
Come to Lenny.
So he seems pretty clueless, right? Oblivious. And yet he's 2/3 of Americans. 66% or more, depending on the survey, live paycheck to paycheck. Can barely afford the finance charges. Yeah, that's the world we live in. But we're going to do things a bit differently. So 7:50. Any questions on any of this before? Because what we're doing here is we are giving you a drink of water from a fire hose, and it is going to be rapid fire. I'm going to email this out to you so you can read it again and process it. So please read it again and process it. But any questions on what we've just covered, those scriptures? Here's the spreadsheet I mentioned. Average salary in America, $46,000. Persons, I can't see what, I have them doing 10%. So they're putting in 10% of their salary. This doesn't count if their company has a 401k plan and if they're contributing. Does anyone have a company that puts money in? What percentage do they put in? Up to 8%. Up to 8%? Is that dollar for dollar? Awesome.
5% they pay, and then they match the benefits.
I'm sorry, they do what?
5% they give, and another 3% they match.
Okay, so a total of 8%.
Yeah.
Awesome again. Bill?
6% match.
Okay, so a lot of companies will do 6%, but 50 cents on the dollar. So is that dollar for dollar or 50 cents for dollar?
They match your first 6%.
Okay, so dollar for dollar. Okay, cool. By the way, national average is about 50 cents on the dollar up to 6%, so they're doing 3%. Saw some other hands, sir?
7% match and then a 10% profit share. So 17%.
Very cool. Very cool. So, basic advice here. If they're going to do dollar for dollar up to 8%, if you do less than 8%, you're leaving free money on the table. You're saying, no thanks, I'm good. I don't need any more free money compounding for me. And people do that. Last year, they calculated it was like $25 billion that people said no to. My company, it's a 9%, so it's 4% dollar for dollar with a 5% fixed profit sharing. Think about what your salary is. And then, Jacob, what's 17% of that? That's on top of your salary. So by the way, when you're looking for work, don't just consider salary, but consider 401k and other benefits. By the way, I'm the benefits manager for my company. So health savings accounts, if that's an option, it's almost always the best option because that's something I can grow and compound for you too. But always put in at least enough to get that company match. Even if you, and I disagree with Dave Ramsey on this one, even if you're paying down debt, even if you're trying to tackle and you're tightening that belt and you're cutting off the cable and you're doing this, and I'm going to take light rail. I'm not driving anymore, so we can save $100 a month on gas. And we're not going out deep, but once a month, and that's to Qdoba. You know, we're not going to Outback. We're not going to Ocean Prime. We're going, you know. Even if you're doing all those things, which is wise if you are in debt, I personally would not cut back on your 401k and give up that free money. So, again, that's my opinion. We all have our own opinions. Very smart people have their own opinions. That's why we read and study and think and process it. So in this example, this person, you can't see it, is 25 years old, and it's 2016. So this person never got a raise. So this person isn't the average American. You know, usually over 40 years, you're going to get a raise. This person did not even get a raise. One of the things you notice, hopefully, is that it takes a while. So this is a 6% average annual return, which means 1 year they got 8%, 1 year they got 2%, 1 year they got 10, 1 year they got 4. Over time, it averaged out to 6%, 8%, 10, 12, 15. Stock market over 70 years averages about 10%. Anyway, so what I've noticed is that usually it'll take a certain amount of time, depending on salary and contributions, company contributions, all that, for that to equal out to like $1 million. Let's say it takes 20 years for something to equal out to $1 million. Let me see if I can actually give you a real number here. In the 10% row. What's that?
Don't you have the years on one side? I see it at computation.
Yeah, but it's not showing up on here. So in this case, it took the person 32 years for their first $1 million. It took 8 years for the second million. So what happens is it starts, you know, a little snowball at the top of the hill, and it rolls over and it picks up a little extra and picks up a little extra. And it takes a while for that first million. But then after that, it doesn't take nearly as long. And then it takes half again as long for that second one. So if you are young, and I see some younger people here, do this. Do it now. If you're older, you can even tell them, do this now. Don't do what I did. And learn what you're doing. Again, do the S&P 500 index fund, read, learn, study, and get smart on this. If you get a financial advisor, make sure that your financial advisor is a fiduciary. A fiduciary, and they'll put it in writing. It basically says everything I'm telling you and advising you to do is in your best interest, not mine. But anybody can give you a business card and say financial planner on it. You could have been, you know, the DJ with the dreadlocks last week. He could be washing cars or whatever. He can hand you that and say, hey, you really need to buy this annuity. You really need to buy these bonds. You really need to buy that. And he doesn't have to tell you that he's getting incentives from companies to get you to buy that. It might have really high fees, which compound against you. It might not be in your best interest at all, but it's in his or her best interest. And so make sure if you get a financial advisor that they are a fiduciary, that they will tell you, I'm a fiduciary, and they'll put it in writing. Recent law change requiring them to start doing this, but a lot of people have been given bad advice over the years. For example, the regular advice when someone retires, let's say they worked for the company with a 17% company contribution for 30 years, and they got $2 million in their 401k. Oh, what you need to do is you need to roll that over to an IRA, and you should invest in this, this, and this, and this. Well, every time you move money into something, you're paying them fees. They're getting commissions on that. When the money can stay in your current 401k, or you can move it into an IRA yourself and put it into an index fund or something like that. So you don't have to do all that. So they've been giving people a lot of it. They were making a lot of money off people retiring, the baby boomers. So again, we have to be informed. I think I told you, a good friend of mine at work, he's got 2.3 in his 401k, and he's 55. So it should be around 4 million or so when he turns 65. And he's got other stuff too. He loves this stuff. He lives in this world. And he's been doing this since he was 20. He's been steadily, consistently investing. And he's a really good guy. He teaches people. He wants everyone to do well. And he lives very frugally. He is that millionaire next door. Dave hates books. But he reads Money Magazine. He still reads it, even though he could write it. But he's always looking for one or two nuggets, something to think about, something to learn and grow. And I think that we should all be doing that with our health and our wealth and our relationships. When you see someone who's winning that, ask them. I told you, if you're reading one book a year in these areas, people are going to be coming to you in a few years and asking you, let me take you to lunch because I want to learn from you. What should I do? What do you think I should do? And then you tell them index funds and, fiduciary and those things. Don't leave money on the table, right? Let's see. Romans 12:12. It tells us, do not copy the behavior and customs of this world. What are the behaviors and customs of this world we live in? Stuff. I'm sorry, what? Immediate gratification. I need stuff, more stuff, more stuff. I can't put any more stuff in my house, so let me put stuff in my garage. My garage is full. Let me get a storage unit. And then let me have a yard sale and sell everything for 99% off. Because I used it once or twice. Right? That's the American way. It's aimless, it's blind, it's expensive. 40% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck all of the time. 77% live paycheck to paycheck at least some of the time. We buy stuff we can't afford and may not really need. We buy stuff with credit cards so we can have it now. We owe them, we work for them, we need them in their credit rating. Our credit score, that rules all. We try to keep up with others and impress people who aren't really all that interested. I can't remember who it was who said it, but the quote goes something like this. If you realize how little, you wouldn't worry so much about what other people thought of you if you realize how seldom they did. It's not meant to be mean. It's just saying they're worried about themselves and they're worrying about what you think of them. They're not thinking about, their pants are a little high water. That's in school that do people care about, Now it's in style, right? So again, if you want an above average life, an abundant life, we have to choose a different path, different choices, different results. So we learn to value what's truly important, like salvation, like our family, like our health. We learn to say no to instant gratification. We realize that you can't win at anything without delayed gratification. And again, in relationships, instant gratification, saying what you feel, not apologizing, those things. Putting down the paper and having a conversation. Turning off the TV and having a conversation. Admiral Akbar. Sorry about that. I'll fix the notes. So, who remembers the Great Depression? Anybody here who was there? My grandmother lived through the Great Depression. Actually, all of my grandparents did. My grandmother, I mentioned her last week, she was born in 1884. So she was 46. Yes, 46 when the market crashed and the Great Depression began. Do you know how that changed people's lives? Have you heard those stories? That people, they didn't throw anything away, and food became compost, everything got used, And when these people die, loved ones go in there and they find 100, used butter containers that they've been using for Tupperware and whipped cream, whatever. Very thrifty, very frugal, always afraid that that could happen again. Most of them had their own gardens and ate healthier than the rest of us as a result. And got exercise too from that. Gardening, by the way, man, you pull that weed and you have to go, oh, you will feel that the next day, I'll tell you. But that was a life-changing moment. The beautiful thing is we don't have to live through that again to come to that same result. We can get sick and tired of being in this position as well. We can say, I'm not going to do that anymore. And again, you can decide to get sick and tired. You can say, no more, no más. So, and that can go for our health as well. You know, there's a, I don't remember where I have it, but there's a, I think it's 77% of people who are diagnosed with heart disease or who've had a heart attack and smoke, 77% don't quit smoking. And I work with a gentleman, he's a year younger than me. He had a pretty bad heart attack last November. Can't quit. He's still smoking. You know, his why that we talked about, his why isn't big enough. You know, he wants it. He wishes he wasn't smoking anymore. But he doesn't hate smoking. He doesn't see it as a threat to his life. That wants to kill him. He hasn't processed that. Or he's given up. But we can, again, there's a 23% saying, done. I'm going to die, wait, what? And leave my wife a widow and I'm not going to see my kid and my grandbabies? No, I'm done. I'm not going to do that anymore. So it all depends on us. My other handout. Okay, so in the investing world, they tell us, start early, start when you're young. But if you're older, start now. Do it now. So if you are not doing this, if you are living paycheck to paycheck, stop it now. If you have not been putting money away for retirement and you're 10 years away, start it now. The book over here, Start Late, Finish Rich. What his point in that, and I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it's like, you know what? Most people when they're young, they can cut out a latte a day and have enough to fund a really nice retirement. $10 a day of latte, or $5, how much is a latte nowadays? Okay, so it's not Starbucks, it's $5. Okay, so $5 a day, that is what, $180 a year? Wait? Oh yeah, my math is way off. Okay, so, yeah, maybe. So $150 a month. So what? $1,800 a year. What does that look like over 40 years? Big money. And I'll show you how to do that if you want with a spreadsheet like this that hopefully you'll be able to read. I will email this out. But anyway, you see in this example, if this person who makes the average American salary and doesn't get a company match, gets no other money, gets no raises at all, if they get a 6% return, which means they're not doing the index fund, they've got $800,000 in retirement. The average American has $25,000 to last them for 15 or 30 years. If they get an 8% return, you're looking at almost $1.4 million. And if they get, again, what the market has averaged over the last 70 plus years, you're looking at $2.4 million. They're probably not going to be sweating whether Social Security is going to be funded or not, starting in 2033 when it's projected to go insolvent. They're not worried about that. The other thing, by the way, the two biggest expenses in retirement, can you tell me what they are? Housing and healthcare, you got it. Healthcare hopefully if we're doing some healthy habits, we can reduce those things over time. You never know, obviously. Things happen randomly. Bad drivers, I've been that person too. But we might be able to lower that too. Housing. 45 years of working, and many Americans still have a mortgage in retirement. Now, because a lot of people move, there's a lot of reasons, some good, some bad. But hopefully our goal is when we retire, we're going to have a paid off property. So, and again, that's something, especially if you're younger, that you strive for. When I bought a house in Virginia in 2004, I didn't think about it. They gave me a 30-year mortgage. I moved in 2010. 6 years later, the market had a slight correction in 2008, where I lost over $200,000 in value on my home. It kind of sucks, right? It kind of stinks. So I ended up being upside down. Had I had a 15-year mortgage and paid $400 more a month for that 15-year mortgage, my house I would have been, even though I lost value, I still would have had more than my mortgage, and I could have sold instead of having to try and get a renter for a year and a half and then writing a check because I was still upside down. A 15-year mortgage will pay off your house in 15 years. And even if you move in 5 years, which a lot of people are doing, you've still built up enough equity because you've paid down the principal that you should be able to get something back. You shouldn't be upside down like I was. Again, it depends on the market. When's the last time we had a big correction like that? Great Depression?
And then the 80s we had one, but nothing this bad.
Yeah, so a big correction in the 80s, but not as bad, and that's when they were paying double-digit interest rates and stuff like that. So, but anyway, there's a tip for you. When you buy a house, if you can, get a 15-year mortgage. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to share a quick story because I have a friend of a friend who is, they're retired, but they've been renting all this time. And the owner of the house recently decided that they were going to sell the house. And so they now have to move. And so you're talking about people in their, late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s or so, that are scrambling to try to find a place to live in a market that is...
Rents have been going up?
Yeah, it's just horrible. And I'm just like, what a horrible place to be at that point in your life. It's just hard. It's hard hearing about it.
How long have they been renting?
I mean, they've been in this years, like probably 15 or more years they've been in this house. I think it was like 27 years they've been renting this house.
Yeah, David Bach in his book, Start Late, Finish Rich, and his other book, Automatic Millionaire, and those, he makes the case that when you rent, you're making the landlord rich. No, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's the right time to rent. When Jessica and I got married, yay, I had a mortgage, actually I had a double mortgage in Virginia. She had a mortgage in Connecticut, and she had a lot of student loans. That wasn't a good time for us to buy, even though there were some really good deals out there. But over the next 3 years, we paid off our student loans, sold our houses and wrote checks because we were both upside down. And then we could save and buy. And that's what we did. So don't get me wrong. For a season, renting may be the best thing for you. Over the long term, owning your home is going to be better. Think about when you own your own home, even if you do have a 30-year mortgage, it only goes up slightly because of property taxes, right? The actual principal payment doesn't go up unless you have an adjustable mortgage, an ARM. By the way, when you buy, my advice, get a 15-year mortgage. Payment should be no more than 25% of your take-home pay, and get a fixed rate mortgage. Get a fixed rate. Do not get the adjustable. That hurts so many people. But it doesn't go up. Rents go up, especially over 15 years. So, okay, we're still fire hosing you here. Okay, so when you're investing, you always want to max out your tax advantaged opportunities like a 401k or an IRA before you go and do anything else. Before you go and buy, invest in mutual funds aside from that. Right now, someone who's under 50 can put in $18,000 into a 401k. If you don't have access to a 401k, you can put in $5,500 into an IRA. If you have a company match, all of those contributions will be pre-tax contributions. And when you roll that over later to an IRA, you will pay taxes on it when you withdraw it, when you make withdrawals. How are we doing on time? 8:15. Okay. So we're not going to get through this one. But some of it's I've already mentioned. The Roth. Are you all familiar with the Roth? Okay, so let me tell you about the Roth. So most people, when they think 401k or IRA for retirement planning, they're thinking pre-tax dollars, which means that you're going to be you're going to get more of your paycheck home to you because you're putting in pre-tax dollars. It will grow tax-free. Hopefully it will grow. But when you take it out, you will pay taxes. So you get the tax benefit up front because it was pre-tax dollars, and it grew tax-free. So it's a double tax advantage. A Roth, you put in after-tax dollars, so you didn't get the tax benefit up front, but it grows tax-free and it comes out tax-free. So, young person, that money compounding and coming out tax-free, that's a beautiful thing. Of course, you'll have less money in your paycheck. So what I've advised young people I work with is maybe gradually switch to that. Maybe you do 50-50 pre-tax, 50-50 after-tax or Roth, and then 40-60, 30-70, until you're doing all Roth, and then the company match, company contributions is all pre-tax. So you're still tax diversified. You're still going to have some payment there. But the Roth is definitely a good friend to our young people and our high earners. We do very well with it. Let's see.
Can everybody get into a Roth?
Everyone can, no, if your company doesn't have a Roth 401k, you cannot contribute to a Roth 401k. They have to add that feature, that option.
Isn't there a salary limit?
No, not to the 401k. Now the IRA, there is a salary limit. I think it's $110,000. That if your joint income is over $110,000, you can't contribute. But there's something really cool. It's called the backdoor Roth IRA, and even billionaires can contribute to that. And what that is, and you can check and double check what I'm telling you. But what that is, you put in after-tax dollars into a traditional IRA, and then about a week later, you convert that to your Roth IRA. And you just don't pay taxes because you've already paid taxes. So it's legal. They may close that loophole, but right now, it's good.
So that's absolutely true?
Yes.
It only works if you have no other IRA assets under your name or social security number anywhere. So you have to have everything else in a 401k, not in an IRA.
That's not what I read. And I checked with Greg Jackson and a couple other people. But definitely check that out yourself. I'm trying to see. Okay, so how much do you need for retirement? Okay, so one of the things I'm going to send to you is a handout. It's from Fidelity, but there's many others out there. So on this one, basically I call it like milestones or something. It says by the age of 30, a good milestone is you have 1 times your annual salary in your 401k/IRA. By the age of 35, you have 2 times. By the age of 40, you have 3 times. 45, 4 times. 50, 6 times. 55, 7 times. And by age 60, you have 8 times. And these are just general things. But the problem is, who knows what you need for retirement? It depends on what your lifestyle is going to be like. My mom did not need 8 times her salary because her needs are so little. If you like to fish, if you like to read, if you like to walk, you don't need a lot. If you like to travel, if you like to golf, if you like to, eat, and you're a foodie and you have to go to every 5-star restaurant on the planet, you're going to need a lot of money. So it really depends. It also depends if you have a mortgage. But if your home is paid full and you don't like to do a lot of expensive things, you like to do one big trip a year or something like that, you may not need 8 times. But it really depends. But again, this isn't something to make people kind of freak out. It's one of those things to make you think about, what do I really need? And what am I going to want to do? And if I'm going to want to do some of those things, maybe I need to up my saving and investing now. But again, 10 to 15% is generally a rule of thumb. For the younger folks, you can see it's going to be beautiful numbers. Older folks, take a look and see what you have. You can plug them in there. I can help you with that. You'll just go up to the top. See if I can show you. And you'll plug in how much you have right here, and then just add in the rest through the formulas. And under the year, next to the year, you can't see it, but is year and then age. You'll just change the age and then forecast it out. And you can see what that looks like. So with the different returns. And you may want to look and see what you've returned from your investments the last few years and see how you've done. Last year, I think I got 0.02% growth. Not a good year last year. Year before that, I think I got 10%. Year before that, 33%. Year before that, 15%. And then the year before that, it was negative. I don't remember. I cried too much. I don't know. But, a lot of people were crying a lot then. So, but again, the thing is, it all depends on what you will need in retirement. If you have a paid off property, you won't need as much. If you're not going to travel and do a lot of those things, you won't need as much. If you have very good health, you won't need as much. That's not to say don't do it, but don't freak out about it, especially if you're young and you have a lot of time. Okay? And by young, that's pretty much anyone younger than 49. Okay? Okay, I think that's probably wraps up. Let me know.